Hey guys, Mike Verkest from the Second Shift Podcast here to talk to you about PIASE. Back in 1996, I had 2 certifications to manage, my state license and national registry. That was it. Fast forward 20-some years later, and what I would give to have just 2. Between my advanced certifications, ACLS, PALS, PHTLS, you name it, I'm looking at upwards of 10 certifications to manage. That's where PIASE saves my bacon. I simply add my certs, expiration dates, and bam, no more surprises. Take pictures front and back and share those credentials with whoever needs them. With the touch of a button, it's easy. Go to the App Store now for your device and search for PIASE, P-I-A-C-E-T, PIASE. Do it today.
The content of this podcast is based on medical fact and evidence-based practice from credible authoritative sources, but is not a substitute for your institution's policies, procedures, common sense, or good judgment. The views and opinions are those of Eric Bauer and FlightBridgeED in their entirety. This is the FlightBridgeED Podcast, critical care and emergency medicine education for nurses and paramedics. Here's your host, Eric Bauer.
Hey everybody, Eric back with you. Today I've got an amazing podcast. Sitting here having lunch with Evan.
What's up?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Kind of a surprise. We started texting this morning and said, why don't we have lunch?
Yeah.
Haven't been able to see each other for a while, so it's been a long time coming.
Yeah. Had a little break in my schedule, and it's always good to get a break.
Well, there's a lot of people out there who have asked about you and have wished you well. Just talking to a few people on the phone, Bruce and Tyler, on the way here, they just sent their wishes and say they miss you. And
What's
I know
up?
The people out there miss you. So
Well, I'm glad to be talking to you. And hello, Bruce. Hello, Tyler. Hello, Mike. Hello, everybody.
So if anybody new is listening, we're constantly getting more and more downloads, and that translates obviously to me that we're having more and more people subscribe. If you haven't heard me talk about Evan and I and my wife, we founded FlightBridgeED
Many years ago.
Yeah. So it is it's very emotional for me just to have you here and to be able to reflect. This podcast is, I think, a perfect podcast because you're an amazing paramedic, and
Thank you.
You've chosen to go into ministry and kind of step away from medicine for a while, and you never know what life's going to throw at you. I think someday you'll come back, but if you don't, you've had an amazing career. You're highly respected around the country, and a lot of people love you. And so I think the podcast that I've had the most requests on in the last, I'd say, year is, what steps do I have to take to become a flight paramedic? What steps do we, what should I do? And I get those emails, and what are the things that I should be doing? What classes should I take? How should I prepare? And I thought, what a perfect podcast to do with you.
Yeah, I think so. And in fact, it was the reason that we founded FlightBridgeED in the first place, is that I had since 1999, had a career as a paramedic and had always wanted to step into the role of flight paramedic. But there's just really no way to get into that except for just having experience and some knowledge. And so with these tests that are very expensive, they're very time consuming to study for, not only just to study for, but to find the right material to study.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where FlightBridgeED was born, was in just preparing for.
Yeah, but it's amazing to kind of reflect on the evolution of FlightBridgeED, because we didn't start FlightBridgeED as a business whatsoever.
No,
FlightBridgeED
no.
was strictly a podcast, and it was just going to be to try to educate the masses. We saw a deficiency in our setting, in the rural environment, or really in emergency medicine on the pre-hospital side, and used the MCRIT kind of mantra, of taking upstairs care downstairs. And I remember when I first heard him say that, I thought, man, that is such a brilliant way to think of it. Why can't we do the same thing? We really were the first podcast pre-hospitally in the critical care realm, and obviously started very humbly. And
Yes,
I remember
we
when
did.
we had our first release, and that release, I think we had like 30 downloads. And remember,
so.
I called you, and I was so excited.
We were happy to break 20.
Oh, yeah.
That was great.
It's amazing.
It was great.
So we thank everybody for listening and staying with us now, and we're going on 6 years, so that's cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you guys.
So that, again, is the mission of FlightBridgeED. It's a partnership in discovery. And I'll start with this, and then I'm going to start kind of interviewing Evan, and we'll have that dialogue back and forth. Is when I reflect back and think about why I am who I am, why I love education, why I love to constantly learn. I've always had, and I understand that not everybody is this way, I've always had an insatiable desire for knowledge, almost to the point where I can't even fill that tank. Like it's almost a negative. It is almost, you almost always feel like you're never attaining and fulfilling this internal desire. And so I've always had that desire. And I've realized throughout my career that it's not the advanced procedures we do. It's not the cool things, the innovations, the chest decompressions, chest tubes. That's not what does it. And even though you may not have certain protocols or certain abilities to do these cool procedures, maybe you're working in a rural environment, or maybe you're working for a large urban area where the protocols in those areas sometimes are pulled back a little bit because you have so many EMS providers for one medical director, and it seems like the protocols aren't as in depth. But it comes down to, it's not about that stuff. If you are highly educated and you're always quenching or trying to quench that desire for knowledge, then you're able to make decisions better. You're able to stay calm in those real sick patient scenarios and think clearer and make better overall decisions. And I think that's what separates a good nurse, paramedic, doctor from another, is if you have the knowledge to look at something from a wide perspective, you may see things completely differently than somebody else that is now internally panicked or outwardly panicked, because I think not having that knowledge, that automatically brings stress to each individual because you feel out of control.
Yeah, I think so. In fact, I think that there was one situation that I can remember early on in my career that made me hungry to know more. It wasn't because I wanted to do anything fancy. It wasn't because I wanted to do something new. It was this one patient that I got from the nursing home that was in heart failure. She was drowning. And I remember telling her before we left, "Hon, I'm going to take care of you. I'm not going to let anything happen to you." And before I got to the hospital with her, I was coding her, and she passed. And that was my ghost. I think we all have ghosts.
Yeah.
And I think it always pushes us to the next level, to the next thing. And to be honest, at that point in my career, I didn't understand CHF.
We thought we did.
We thought we did
Yeah.
to a little degree.
Yeah.
But I wanted to know why. Why did she die? Why couldn't I save her?
Right.
And that stuck with me for a long time. And so that may be a bad motivation that something happened, and you're now kind of going back to get the knowledge that you thought you should have had. But that's the motivation that drove me to want to learn more.
Yeah, and I think we've realized, each one of us, when I say each one of us, you guys listening, we all have those stories. I guarantee we all have multiple calls where we scratch our heads and wonder, why did that person die? I think that really was a part of me early on in my career that I struggled with, because it seemed like I always had this black cloud, I always had this I always got the worst things, and patients would die. And I realized that we can't control that. All you can do is make the very best decisions. And if you perform well, sometimes patients are still going to die. And then you get into the HIM side, and you go through periods where every single patient that you drop off at these hospitals end up dying. Every single one of them.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like you end up being the witness for their death.
Yeah.
You're going to, whether you did anything or not.
Right.
You were just going to be the witness to their death.
Right. So when we look at the road to critical care, we've kind of wrote down a few high points. That road to critical care is it starts with, what should I do? And that's the question I always get. Where should I start? Well, the first thing is that I will say this. Whether you're a 6-month paramedic, whether you're a 1-year paramedic, this is no knock against these veterans. But over my time as an educator, especially with Air Methods and hiring, I have seen the younger 3-year paramedic. They're much, not all the time, and I don't want to say this the wrong way, but they just seem like they're more teachable.
Yeah.
They are more up on, they're just able to grasp some of these new concepts, and I think we're all that way. This is my 26th year. You have some of this, you have a lot of this stuff that is constantly changing. You have to really be humble and realize that you don't have all the answers, and I think that's the harder. I know that's old.
Well, I agree. I think part of the reason that is the paramedic industry as a whole, not just flight medicine, but even ground medicine, has changed so dramatically over the years. And so folks that have been in the game for a longer period of time remember a time when it was hanging around the EMS station and watch some TV and eat some food and take grandma to the hospital.
Yeah.
But things have changed. Things have really changed in the industry.
Sure.
There are really sick patients.
There are, and so I guess my point is that whether you're a 1-year paramedic, a 3-year paramedic, a 10-year paramedic, don't be afraid to have that desire. And I say this is you're going to have these Debbie Downers, we'll say, in every single organization. There's always going to be that 1 or 2 individual people that don't understand why you're reading a book, why you're so into these new evidence-based types of topics. But that's all right. You define your circumstance.
Right.
We control our own path.
Yeah.
Don't let those people pull you down. You do you. Stand alone. Be that shining example, and you will be noticed. I mean, you ultimately you can't fall in that trap. Don't surround yourself with that negativity. You have to start with and number one, understand your overall dreams and desires and what you want to attain. And one of the things that I learned from my stepdad was he said write goals down and put them by your bed. And so when I went to paramedic school, I wrote those goals down. And if you really truly want something, maybe that's that fuel to where you see it every single day. So I think that's the first step is you have to make the decision, conscious decision to stand alone and do things that others aren't willing to do, because it takes a lot of work. I mean, it really does take a lot of work, a lot of time. Yeah. And your spouse, if they're not in the same line of work, they might not understand. They might not get why you're so into these books, these podcasts, these things, and that's fine. Yeah. But you have to set your priorities to get to where you want to go.
Absolutely.
I think that's the number one thing.
Yeah, I think so too.
Alongside that is, even if you're a 1-year paramedic, don't be afraid to start taking critical care courses. I've had many 1-year paramedics. I had a paramedic that hasn't even, it was last year in Amarillo, Texas, hadn't even passed his national registry yet, was not even a paramedic yet, and he came and sat through that class. And, very bright individual. And afterwards he told me, he goes, there was some stuff that I definitely was like, holy cow, I don't know what you're talking about. Obviously bloom pump stuff, things that they don't ever cover. But, I applaud people like that. I applaud. Yeah. Don't be afraid, even if it's 2 days after you get your national registry and your state license. If that's what you want to do it.
That's a great time when you're still on fire and you still desire it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people too, they lack the confidence in themselves. I think that's a huge thing, and like Eric's saying, don't let other people bring you down. Even seasoned people, and as an educator with Air Methods in the past, there were so many people when Eric and I stepped into our roles as educators. We were in a period with Air Methods that and it's a great company. It's a great company, great educators. But we stepped into a period where people's confidence were shaken. and things that they had to know. And I think there's a way to educate people, and we try to go about that in the right way, and just to bring people's confidence level up. But if you go into this with a high confidence level and you know your stuff, and chances are down the road you may run into another confidence depriving time in your career.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to not only have confidence in yourself, but to attach yourself to people who pour into you, who pour the confidence back into you to say, you can do this, you can learn this, and I'll help you. And so for me as an educator, that was huge, and that was really what drew me to education. I know I'm getting in the weeds with our list, but
I think those are great points. I mean,
I think that really was what drew me in. Education in and itself. I love to see people learn something new, but for me, to see someone's confidence built, just teaching them something that they needed to know, or just being beside them and encouraging them and motivating them and moving them on to be a mentor in their life. I mean, that meant so much to me. Even boosting my career and pushing me to learn more, because you can't ever lead somebody to where you haven't been.
That's huge. Yeah, that's a big statement.
Yeah. So I think that you have to learn, and once you learn, you can bring people with you, and that's important.
Yeah. The thing I love, what you just said, was attaching yourself to somebody that has already been there, that you see as a role model, a mentor. If they're willing to do that, and I've thrown out that invitation many times, and I throw it out now. If that's you, reach out to me. My email is eric.bauer@flightbridgeed.com. I definitely will pour everything I can into you and help you attain what you need to attain to reach your goals. I'll tell kind of a quick story that I think is really fitting to this. Is one of the students that had taken our 8-week critical care classes, is a paramedic in Kentucky. His name's Carl Binion. And I've talked to Carl about this, and Carl is, he's been a paramedic a long time, and admittingly, he told me, he's like, man, I was about to call it quits. I was burnt out, just thought I was at the end of my rope. And he goes, I came and I took your critical care class, and something woke up inside me. You got me excited. And we had an anonymous donor actually donate to our Fast 18, and I believe I don't remember if we did or not, but I believe I offered him one of those spots. So he comes down to Fast 18, and when he left Fast 18, he texted me and he said, "You have changed my life. You have changed the way I look at medicine. I am so excited. I'm so on fire. I just can't stop learning. And I realize that there's so much more for me as a paramedic." And let me tell you,
it's the most rewarding feeling as an educator ever.
So I applaud you, Carl. So then I'll take a step further. He texts, he's been texting me back and forth. We've been talking. He texted me 2 weeks ago, and he goes, "Dude, I just had an LVAD patient last night," and he goes, "I was scared to death, and we get all the way up to Louisville, and right when we're rolling into the hospital, she freaking goes unresponsive, starts going unresponsive, starts getting pale, and starts going out." And at Fast 18, Alan Wolf had done a 20-minute LVAD talk. That's not the easiest talk to do in 20 minutes.
No. If anybody could do it, it's Alan Wolf.
Oh, yeah. And so Carl said, all I thought about was what Alan said, and so I changed the battery and the controller out, or the driveline and the controller out, I believe is what he said. And so she got better. He fixed her. And so I told Alan this story, and he couldn't even believe it. And so I connected them too. They talked on the phone, and I told Alan afterward, I said, "See, dude, your 20-minute talk saved a life. You taught Carl something that he was able to immediately apply, and ultimately through your education, that saved a life." Carl did the work. He had to retain that information, that material. But it just really goes to show that there's so much out there. And if you're at a point in your career where you just feel like you don't want to learn anything more. Maybe it's just that you don't have the right people or the right tools around you, because there's some amazing opportunities out there as far as free education goes.
Yeah.
So I think the road to critical care starts by preparing. You got to prepare. You got to set some goals. That's number one.
Yep.
And then the whole experience. Where do you think, when you look at experience, we have the two types of paramedic experience. You can work in an urban environment, or you can work in the rural environment. And I think there's honestly positives to both. I worked in an urban environment starting out.
I worked in a rural environment starting out. I don't even know how you say it. Rural. Yeah, you're a Kentuckian, rural.
so you missed that syllable, but I won't knock you on that. But no. So I started urban. We're running 12, 14 calls at 12 hours. We 4 on, 4 off. And, you're running thousands of calls a year, and a lot of good calls, a lot of volume, a lot of system abuser calls. We didn't have to do any transfers, which was nice. It was all 911.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, none.
I hate you.
0.
Hate you. It was transfers all the time. 3 a.m. back to the nursing home.
Oh yeah. And so then I transferred and I worked rural, where it was large county, 600 square miles, and it was 4 ambulances, 5 ambulances. Completely different type of medicine,
Yeah, it's very seat of your pants kind of medicine. You don't know what the next second's
You're
gonna
40, 50 minutes from a hospital, and you're working a code with your EMT basic partner in you, and that's it. It's round robin for the paramedic,
That's
right?
exactly right. Pull out everything and just do it. It doesn't even matter. Get the bedpan out too while you're at it.
So I think I don't really know what the right answer is. I almost think that I would probably, if I had to choose one or the other, I would probably take a rural paramedic over an urban paramedic.
I think so, but then again, I think it does gets back more to the service than it does anything.
Sure.
I think there's probably some more progressive urban environments that would even lead you into a better education experience, and you get into the rural environments and you get more hands-on experience.
Sure.
And sometimes learn, just like I said with the CHF patient, you just learn because you have to, or because you don't want that to happen again. So I agree with you. I think probably it's almost a Wild West mentality with it too, is that I can remember so many times people would tell me, hey, just use this, this, and this. That's not what any of that is for, but just use this. I promise it'll work. Just try it. And so you go and you pull out the SAM sling and the Sager and two IV bags and some tubing and an elastic bandage, and you do something and you save somebody's life. And it's all just because that people learn by their experience and they share it with you. So,
and I'm not discounting urban paramedics, but I do feel like in a lot of services and systems, and this was even for me, I experienced this is when I worked in Portland, Oregon, Multnomah County. That's a very progressive part of the country. Yeah. And but going from that area down to back where I was from, there was a lot of difference in our protocols.
Sure.
As far as our ability to do things. I've always had the ability to RSI as a paramedic. I've never not had that ability, even on the ground. And I had that ability even in Portland, but there's differences. Like if you have 14 hospitals in one area and you have an average transport time of 5 minutes, the thought process long term isn't triggered. You don't have to really rely on some of that stuff because you're 5 minutes away. And that's where I really think there's some separation between the rural paramedic or provider and having to really critically think for a long time. I think there's a lot to be said there.
Yeah.
The protocol side, can be completely dependent on how well somebody is able to perform as well. What are you able to do? Because there is going to be a big jump. When you get on an aircraft, there's a big, big jump. I think there's companies that are different. I can tell you from our experience with Air Methods, it's pounding in your head that these are guidelines. Mm-hmm. They're very, very gray, too. If you're a black and white person, which most of us are in some ways, black and white, you can't be black and white. You have to be able to fluidly move through multiple protocols or guidelines. They don't even like that word. And in some cases, HEMS-wise, not to say this in the wrong way, but you're almost practicing a small level of medicine, with the decision making you're supposed to be able to do, and I think that's where maybe that rural paramedic maybe has a small advantage.
Yeah. I think so. I think even the hiring process with Air Methods, where we go in and we have a simulator, and I think more than just being able to spit out a protocol or spit out whatever it is that you're supposed to do for this case, it's just evaluating someone's thought process more than it is anything.
Sure.
And so I think hiring with Air Methods has a lot to do with how well can you think.
Sure.
And probably other services too. I don't know.
Yeah, and you know, guys, we're just going off our experience. I mean, that is not, we're not endorsing a specific company, but that's our experience, and I think that is a standard. Is that most companies, I would assume, have moved away from content and test taking. You know, I mean, Air Methods uses that; they use test taking, but
sure.
there's not a lot of weight to it. I mean, there's a minimum score, but it's not really truly how good you do on that. I think it's more, it comes honestly down to how teachable are you. I know that was for me. How teachable is that person? How humble is that person?
Sure, absolutely.
Can they sit across from me and not know an answer that we just asked them and try to flub their way through it? That doesn't score you points. It's always best to stop and say, I don't know. I would rather somebody do that and want to learn than try to flub their way through it and try to act like they know, and you just don't come across in the correct way.
Yeah, the buckets of sweat give you away every single time.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, so just be humble and say, I don't know. I mean, that's all right. They don't expect you to come in and know all that stuff. They're gonna retrain you anyway. You know,
yes, they are.
You know, every company is going to have their specific way of doing things, and they're gonna teach you their way. So I think that's a big deal. Let's get on the whole critical care training side. And you know, I think you and I have a very similar road to critical care. I'll kind of jump in with mine. I honestly never ever fathomed flying. I kind of fell into it. I fell into it because I became a field supervisor. Had been hired with a company, was a field training officer with them, and then I was asked to be an acting supervisor. And part of that, we had 2 aircraft. We had 13 ambulances. We had 2 aircraft, dispatch center, and so we had a fixed wing and a rotor. And so that's how I got introduced to the flight side. And once I got introduced, I was hooked. Like, I never ever thought that was an option. I never even had a desire. But I never ever took a critical care class. I never took a UMBC class. Even before I took my FPC, I never took a review class. I never took anything like that. I took a review class after my first FP, after I passed my FPC the first time, and you know, as my first review. It was a long time ago. But I self-studied myself. You know, I studied about a month. Had flown quite a while at that point, 4 years. You know, it wasn't a big deal back then. 2003, 2004, up to 2008. It wasn't a big deal. Companies weren't absolutely requiring FPC, so a lot of us, you know, you almost did it because you saw the future. But, you know, you get a lot of questions regarding that. And your road was similar, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I think I always wanted to be on a helicopter, and most of that was because the helicopter that we had available to us when I was working. I started my career at Madison County EMS in Richmond, Kentucky, and it wasn't too far up the road that Lexington UK Hospital was there, and they had the UK flight program. And at the time, my shift supervisor was one of the flight paramedics, worked there part-time, may have even worked there full-time for a while. And I thought he was the smartest guy that I ever knew. And there was a couple other guys that were in the area that I knew of, and I just wanted to be more like them. And so it was seeing them, kind of going back to what we were talking to with mentors earlier, seeing them and eventually saying, I want to have the knowledge that they have because I want to fly. I think that's really what ultimately pushed me into wanting to fly.
Yeah. I think everybody's going to have a different fuel. You know, so there's there's lots of options that we could go down as far as education goes, and I'm not going to discount, there's critical care courses out there that are 2 weeks long. There's, the classic UMBC course. Here's all I'm going to say about that is do your due diligence. Check things out. I've had lots and lots of people come to me, and they have traveled to a UMBC course. They've taken the time out of their day, time out of their work schedule. They've taken vacation time, the travel, the hotel, and I've had them come to me and say, I spent $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah,
that just blows my mind. Like,
Absolutely.
I would never do that because I think there's other options out there. I don't think you need to spend that money, and I think that there's a misconception out there. I can tell you the misconception that I've been asked is, well, the UMBC is a critical care paramedic, and it is through UMBC, but there's very few states nowadays that are recognizing UMBC, and I can tell you CAMES, and there is 0 flight programs out there that recognize the UMBC critical care paramedic. I mean, you will not be, that is not going to count, and so I'm always looking at it from the financial side. What is going to be the best for you? Now, if that's something that you feel like is going to benefit you and you need that longer introduction to critical care, then do it. But don't do it because you think you have to go that route. You don't have to go that route. You definitely could take a review course. I'm not just saying FlightBridgeED review course. There's other great review courses out there. I think IA Med has a great review course. I think when you look at our review course, we really try to take it a step further. We really try to teach the physiology. It's not just regurgitating what's on the content, what's on the test. I think that's one reason why we've been very successful is we really share new evidence-based concepts. We're always updating the course. We're always investing in you, the clinician, on how are you going to leave that class and go take care of a patient tomorrow, and can that change that patient's life or your ability to critically think. And I think that is our main mission, is that. And so we teach that over 3 days. Much cheaper than $3,000.
I think so too, and I think the review courses that FlightBridgeED does and the other folks too, I think they are geared towards getting you ready for flight.
Yes.
You can take them for other reasons, but I think they're geared towards getting you ready for flight. And I think that we all learn in a different way. For me, if you teach me how to spit something out, if you just teach me how to regurgitate, I'm not going to learn it as well as if you teach me how does this get from point A to point B.
Right.
What's the microphysiology? I don't even know if that's a word.
No, that's a good point. That's exactly how I think.
Yeah.
So I think the key is that you have to find what's best for you. I think each individual person has to identify the way they learn best. Again, if I was told to teach our course by just regurgitating the stuff, I wouldn't do it. Like, I literally wouldn't do it. It means more to me. And I truly believe that if you teach somebody even the most complex concepts in a very easy to understand format, but you teach them how to do something or why something works the way it works, you remember it. Mm-hmm. And then you're able to look at a question and answer that question. I truly believe that. And I want you to leave the class and understand this stuff and remember it forever. Now, you may have to hear it over and over, and that's where we have the podcast. And I'm not trying to endorse our product. I'm just saying that I don't think that I don't think you need a 2 to 3 week class. I really don't. And now that's me. I definitely don't need that. I didn't need that back then. And honestly, back then, I actually looked into a couple classes. There's one in Portland, Oregon, in Manual, but it was 2 weeks, 2 weeks vacation, 2 weeks away from the house, hotel for 2 weeks, and I couldn't afford it.
No,
there's no way.
I remember a friend of mine and I looked at going to a class because it wasn't a 2 week straight thing for UMBC course. It was like every weekend for a month. Or 2 months. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
But it was a long time. And really looking at the content that they had, I'm sure it's great. Again, I'm not trying to knock a product. I'm sure it's great, but a lot of that knowledge I learned on my own.
Yeah.
I was able to put together just from people pouring into me or questions or finding other sources.
Sure.
I really think that probably meant for some who really need that base knowledge. But I agree with you. It wouldn't have been something that I would have ultimately done.
Yeah, and again, guys, you're going to have to make that determination on yourself. I just don't want people to think that is an absolute way you have to go. You don't have to go that route. You could get your FPC or CCP-C, and test for it 2 months after you become a paramedic. You don't have to have a certain amount of time in. Now, I will say this, that you do have to have 3 years of experience. There's no flight company. A lot of state regulations dictate that as well, that you have to have 3 years of experience before you can apply as a flight paramedic.
And I think that's good. I think you need 3 years in the field before you hop in.
I do too. You need to be able to have that volume, and that's where I say, if you can get a mixture of volume, if you're working 3 years in a really rural environment, and that agency is only running 1,500 calls total for the whole service, that's probably not going to be looked at as favorably as somebody that's running 10,000 calls, and they're more of an urban or middle where you got mixture like that. And I think you have to look at what's your overall ability to see patients. If that's important, and so that's where you may have to make a decision to go work part-time somewhere, or go work PRN for an urban environment if you're working rural, just to get those patient contacts.
Now, one thing that we hadn't talked about yet, kind of in that vein, is don't discount your resources in the hospital. You're dropping patients off all the time. You're making friends with the staff that work at the hospital. There were a couple of doctors that I would drop patients off to, and we became fast friends. And if they knew that you wanted to learn, they would pour into you.
Sure.
So I think that's another resource, just to find people that, again, find some mentors, but find them at the hospitals too. Don't discount that.
Oh, I think that's a great point. I had 2 doctors that still I just think are amazing, and that's Marty Hill. He was my medical director in Josephine County, and then Jimmy Geeson. Jimmy Geeson is a DO, and he was a paramedic before he went to med school. Went to med school real late in his life, in his 40s. But he was, he rubbed a lot of people wrong, but he just he expected you to be top notch.
Yeah.
If you made a mistake, own up to it. But I always loved being challenged by him. That's cool. But that's a personal, innate thing. Some of us like that, some of us don't. I think the majority of us, do, and
Sure.
I think that's good. So I think surround yourself with people that will help build you up. Get that critical care. Now, as far as getting hired, I definitely think if you can come into an organization already having your advanced cert, definitely looks a lot better.
Certainly.
Absolutely. If you can come in with an FPC or your CCP-C, that looks amazing.
Just from an educator standpoint, your educator is going to look at the paper and see that you have your FPC, and it's going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't have to do all this.
Yeah, that's a huge thing.
Yeah,
it really
absolutely.
is. That's a big stress, because there are, you have to get it within 2 years of hire. Some companies have taken that down because they can exceed CAIM's requirements and say 1 year of hire. Now, I will say this, that a lot of the companies, I know MedTrans and Air Methods, if you're looking to get hired by one of those 2 companies, I can't speak for Air Evac or PHI, they have gone to where to recognize an advanced cert for the paramedic, it's only FPC. For the nurse, it's only CFRN. I know MedTrans actually did that a year previous to Air Methods, and I believe Air Methods has done this. I know I was being told that it was going to happen, so forgive me if I'm incorrect, but that is definitely something that's happened. I know CAIMS is actually, on the 11th edition, is taking away the CEN. The CEN is not going to be a recognized advanced cert, and that is a big deal, because you think about the majority, I don't know the percentages, but it's on the nursing side, a huge majority of nurses that come into the HEMS environment are from the ED.
Yeah,
and they already had their CEN. They're like, oh, well, why do I need to get my CFRN? And so now you're seeing these nurses have to get, scramble and now take the CFRN when they could have done it a few years back. So, that's definitely something that you're seeing. And, I don't know if these big companies are foreseeing a change by CAIMS, and that's why they're doing this. I will say on the paramedic side, if you're another misconception I see is, you have the FPC and you have the CCP-C. You've got the you have the 2 critical care paramedic. One's flight and one's ground. And I often get the question of, well, I'm going to take the FPC, and if I don't pass that, I'm going to take the CCP-C. Well, let me just tell you something. The CCP-C is by far a harder exam. It's not even close. Ask around, ask people that have both, and they will tell you the same thing. It is absolutely a nightmare test. And, the reason why I was told it's so much more difficult is a lot of times in these rural areas, you may have a paramedic on an ambulance by themselves with no other ALS provider with them. Whereas if you're in the flight side, you're always going to have a partner. Yeah. Some states fly paramedic, some states fly nurse, most states fly nurse paramedic. And you have another partner to bounce stuff off of. And so the critical care paramedic one, don't think that you're just gonna, well, if I fail the FPC, I'm gonna just go take the easy CCP-C, because you're gonna get really humbled. It's no joke.
Got a cowboy up for that.
Oh one. Man, yeah. So, come in with an advanced cert, and I think that looks really, really good. And then as far as interviewing,
man, that's a hard one.
Let me just give you my few things. When you interview, you need to come in and you need to be dressed. Wear a suit. Wear a shirt and tie. Don't come in tennis shoes and jeans, and you need to come in and present yourself in the highest manner.
Please don't come in your uniform either.
Yeah, don't come in a uniform. Please. Because those things, truly, from an interview standpoint, those make a big impression. When you walk in, you should walk right up to each person that's going to be on the interview panel, and you should shake their hand and introduce yourself. And I mean, those things make a difference. And if you've never had somebody share interviewing 101 with you, you may not know that. And so this is not just a knock on people. It's just these are things that are looked at. That initial perception of somebody is huge. Think about in your life. You walk up to somebody and somebody has negative body language, or they look disheveled. You immediately, without realizing it, judge those people.
Sure you do.
Absolutely. And so I think it goes the same way. And I think the other thing is be well studied. Understand the company you're interviewing for. Be able to ask questions after they ask you all the questions. You should have in your mind 4 or 5 questions. Practice asking those. Write them down beforehand. Type them out on a Word document. Answer them like you're talking to yourself, and read those over and over and over. And so when you're asked, do you have any questions for us? You ask 4 or 5 questions. Man, I love it when I ask those questions and they don't have an answer. Like they can't even answer those questions.
That's good.
That's good. That's a good thing. I mean, it does. If you can make them think and push it back on them, I think that always is a strength.
Yeah, I think so too. I think going back to our talk on experience, a lot of the questions that you're going to get, you're probably sitting in front of experienced flight nurses and flight paramedics.
Oh yeah.
And they may not grill you, but they're going to ask simple questions, things that you should probably already have a shortcut method in your head to laying out. I know I can tell you when we did some interviews at our base. One of our flight nurses there, our sister Heather, she had a good killer question about a nitro drip. Should have already had an answer for it. And how many people came through there and I'm not going to give out that question because I don't want anybody.
Yeah.
But how many people came through there and they weren't able to answer that question, and it should have been one of those things that I know that off the top of my head. So just be studied, be well studied, and be well experienced, and be able to show your experience.
Yeah, and on the same side, on the flip side, if you don't know something,
don't make it
up. Be
up.
humble enough to know that you don't know, and say, "Man, I really don't know, but I'm excited to learn." That's a great response.
An educator can work with that, and there's
Absolutely.
probably going to be an educator there on your interview panel. An educator can work with "I don't know." We can't work with "I know more than you do."
Yeah. I mean, and you come in and I think I remember coming into Air Methods, and I I'll kind of finish with this, and this is a great example. Is when I came in and you and I met.
Mm-hmm.
2011, beginning of 2011, and I had flown 9 years at that point, 3 companies, over 1,000 patient flights. Knew a few people at the base. Had flown with Heather in the past for quite a few years. So, I felt like I had a few friends, but I surely didn't come in and act like I knew everything. You
did.
Dude,
I'm just kidding.
I tried
really
to just
didn't.
keep quiet, and I think that's the key: is you come in and you just stay quiet and you let your actions, let the people around you give you the praise or the respect. It doesn't even have to be verbal praise, but they will outwardly respect you, and you'll be able to tell that. And then, if you want to make changes somewhere, or you're coming into a new situation, that's where you let your actions speak louder than any words whatsoever. It's better to fly under the radar, just do your job, be there to help if asked, but don't come in. I had been an educator, I had done a lot of stuff, but I wasn't going to come in and and try to change things at all. I just tried to be quiet and fly under the radar. And I think that's an important thing, because just like, even though you may be the smartest person in the room, any of us, if you come across the wrong way, if you're arrogant, if you're rude, nobody's going to care how smart you are. That's the big thing. That's a turnoff.
I agree.
Would you agree?
I agree. I mean, you just sit and think about it. I mean, those of you listening now, I mean, just sit and think about it. You've seen that one person. You've had that one person that has come into your base and has tried to show just how smart they are and just how much better they are than you are. And I think if you, all of us would just take a step back and, like Eric is saying, just be humble and realize that there's probably more to learn today than ever before, especially in the way that our industry, the industry is going, and the way our patients seem to be getting sicker and sicker and sicker every day. If we just take some time to sit back and listen and learn, we're going to not only benefit ourselves, but we're going to benefit our patients as well.
Sure. No, and I think that's a great final point. As I said, don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to help you. That's what FlightBridgeED is all about, and help give you advice in maybe decisions, how to move forward with your dreams and desires, and to fly. And I'll tell you that, and I brought it up a few times on the podcast. It's easy. It's easy when I reflect back early on with FlightBridgeED, and where I was able to have the time to invest in my own education and read studies and read articles, and the busier we've gotten, the I don't have the time. I have to force myself to have that time. Like, I have to actually set aside that time and make that time. And one of the things that really stuck out to me that made me realize that was Tyler. He really reminds me of when I was young, and he really, really, really reminds me of how I used to be. And he just has this desire for learning, like almost to a fault. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are young, coming up, that have that desire, and it's a constant reminder for me that I can't sit back and go off of my previous work. I have to keep filling the tank. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even though I may not have the time like I did before, I need people in my life like that.
Sure.
I need to be reminded that, and it's probably like a professional athlete, or college football player, NFL player. You see these guys come in and they're drafted, and you may be this 2-year star, but this guy coming in, he may be a bigger stud than you. He may be working harder behind the scenes than you. Maybe, is going to take your job. And so you have to have that mindset. You can't just be comfortable.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I can relate to that, and don't get verklempt. You'll be fine. But it's the reason that I had to walk away from FlightBridgeED. It's not because I wanted to, but because for me, I mean, let me just say this. What you were just saying about having to make time, having to make set aside that time to study and to learn. I realized that early on when I surrendered to the ministry, that I was going to have to set aside time and make time. And ministry is just as busy. I know we're getting into a different subject. Ministry is just as busy as any other job.
Sure.
Maybe busier. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that you do have to take that time. You have to go back to your priorities that we were talking about way back at the beginning of this podcast and say, what is it that is the call on my life? Is it if it's medicine, that's great. Run after that as fast as you possibly can. Take time to pour into yourself. Take time to pour into others, and you will succeed. But it's all whatever you do in life, whatever you choose to do in life, if you pour yourself into that, you will find the success as long as you stay humble and as long as you're moving forward that you desire.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, I agree. And I'm sure that was a hard decision for you. I know it was. I know you struggled with that. I mean, you see a labor of love and something you've really put a lot of, hundreds, if not thousands of hours into.
Oh, yeah. I still love FlightBridgeED. I still check in. I still make sure that Eric is doing what I tell him to do.
Yeah. Well, it's always correct. So
yeah, that's getting cut out for sure.
Well, guys, I think this has been obviously a real broad podcast. I think this has been well needed. We are going to do a follow-up podcast for you nurses. I'm going to have my wife as a guest and have her tell her side on how she became a flight nurse and where she's at now and just what seemed to help her and where she felt like maybe her experience in the ED, all those things. How did those play into her becoming a flight nurse? And I think that is going to be another good podcast and something that's definitely needed. So if you don't have anything else, dude, I think we'll probably wrap this up.
I'm good, man. I think it's good. Just want to say again, hello to all my friends and all the people that I love in FlightBridgeED and all of you who listen to the podcast. We never really did get to meet. I was always the guy behind the scenes, but I've put a lot of time and effort into thinking about you, praying for you, and hoping that your career is successful in medicine. And I'm proud of you for making the decision to further your education and further your career. And hey, thanks for listening to the FlightBridgeED podcast.
Yeah, so I again appreciate you taking the time out of your day and for just allowing us to spend a little time and reflect. And I think this will be well received. So, thanks. On behalf of everybody at FlightBridgeED and Mr. Evan,
yes, sir.
We will talk to you soon.
This has been a production of the FlightBridgeED Podcast, leading the way in pre-hospital critical care and emergency medicine education.